You're juggling it all: work, family, decisions, expectations, 6 hats, maybe more every single day. But behind the scenes, your body is running on stress, and stress left unchecked will lead to illness. I'm Dr. Shami, an integrated family doctor, and this is 6 Hats, the podcast that helps you understand what stress is doing to your body and what you can do about it now. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 6 Hats podcast. Now, today's conversation is about something we all experience but rarely talk about openly, and that's money stress. Financial strain doesn't just live in our bank accounts. It seeps into our sleep, our relationships, our sense of self-worth. So my guest today, Michelle Campbell, knows this firsthand. She's the founder of Stability, a social impact nonprofit that supports individuals facing homelessness through education and empowerment. Her memoir, Bluebird, a memoir of trauma, heartbreak, and divine beauty in the struggle, is a raw and beautiful story of how understanding money became the key to reclaiming her life. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this conversation because it's not talked about often and it's almost like pushed under the rug. We talk about everything else that's health related, but we don't talk about finance.
Absolutely. And I don't know, why do you think that is? It's almost like a taboo growing up. It's not talked about in schools, in families, it's not talked about. So where did people actually learn about it? We almost go through mimicking maybe friends, family,
Mhm.
figuring it out ourselves, stumbling upon it. There's actually no direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a topic that's kind of faux pas. We don't talk about money. Nobody talks about how much they make and what their credit scores are. And we, unfortunately, are products of our own environment. And so if you don't have anyone in your life that is financially literate, then you just kind of get lost. I do appreciate that there are some schools and educational programs that are trying to put it into the curriculum so that at an early age you can start learning some of the basics. But it's just, I mean, it's kind of, we just deal with it quietly, almost, suffer in silence behind it.
Absolutely. Now, I'm really curious about your story, Michelle. There was a reason why you created this nonprofit and why you're so passionate about it. So I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of zigzag back and forth because it wasn't until the very, like, my rock bottom that I put all the pieces together. And so when I was at my rock bottom, I had just experienced my, fourth repossession. And up until that point, my life just kind of, I felt like I was on this hamster wheel and I could not figure it out because, you know, at least for the last 10 years until that rock bottom, I was not being reckless at all. I was very responsible. And, this wasn't, just stupid and making stupid mistakes. And so it just really didn't make sense. But at that time, I immediately put myself on a 21-day foodless spiritual fast because it was the only thing that I hadn't tried. And I was so desperate just for answers or, to figure out my situation. And that was the only thing I hadn't tried. And it was through that fast, over that fast, that, I forced myself to sit down, be quiet. I couldn't go anywhere because my car had just gotten repossessed. It was almost like spiritually grounded me, but it was so transformable in my life because I started making a timeline of, how did I get here? When did all of this stuff start? And as I was making that timeline, I was able to go all the way back to the mindset around finance. And it started in preschool. And a lot of us don't think about that, is we almost every device that we have. I mean, I have three. I have a Fitbit and a water bottle at the very least that tell me take a moment. That mindfulness is very important for all of us. It doesn't have to be a spiritual thing, but just to be able to take a step back and look at your situation, whether it's good or bad, because we should all always be in the process of learning from mistakes and getting better. But it wasn't until I put together that timeline and connected it to finance and my feelings and emotions around it and actions around it that then it just clicked and it made sense for me. And I felt like I have to get this word out because this was the purpose behind all of it. There's the carnal side of what you're actually going through, but then there's a whole nother spiritual side that we also don't talk about that isn't religious based. It's just what I feel like we're supposed to be giving back to the world. And I felt like my situation happened for a reason, and it happened so that I could help people that are exactly going through some of the things that I went through.
That's amazing, Shah. So I'm really curious. And I guess it goes on to the topic of the relationship with money.
Mhm, mhm,
And I call it, especially when you're younger, you mimic your surroundings. It's almost like
mhm,
because it's the rules of the
mhm,
you learn when you're younger. So what did you
mhm.
learn? What was the message that you got that
Sure. So, yeah, I'm sorry, but so I love to ask people, "Who are you?" Like that's my favorite question. And typically, we answer that kind of on the surface. I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a mom, but who are you? That question, when I'm asking it, it is who is that internal you that no one else knows? And I really feel like we all have experienced a divine moment in our life that's who we are underneath. And that is the person that is out there that you're fighting for whenever you're going through something. And so for me, it is that little 4-year-old little girl on the first day of preschool where I couldn't make a friend. I was not accepted. I had no sense of belonging. I grew up thinking that I was ugly and I was stupid, like for years. But all of my financial mistakes and trauma linked to that little girl.
wow,
And even today, I have to still check it because, you know, something as simple as, oh, okay, there's Christmas coming up. Am I buying this gift for a sense of belonging or acceptance? Or am I buying this because I really care about the person or because I really want to do something nice? I constantly have to check it. And so once I was able to identify that relationship with that internal me, and that was the person that was overdrafting my account and writing checks that I could not cash. That was the person that wasn't following a budget. That was the person that was overspending for that sense of belonging and acceptance. I couldn't. It blew my mind how it linked. And I recently just had a conversation on another podcast, and he identified his person on the podcast. He's like, "Oh, I can't believe it." I'm like, "See how transformable it is." Like, I mean, so we all have that's something that happened in your life, and that is connected to whatever the trauma and the stress and emotions behind different things that you're dealing with in your life. A lot of it isn't financial for everybody. Sometimes it's relationships with people. Sometimes it's just your environment, but there's something, and that's what mine was linked to. And that right there, like, I mean, I just was, and this all happened over that fast. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to tell, I have to tell the world because this isn't just me. I'm no one special, but I know that it is true for a lot of other people too.
oh, I could not agree with you more, Michelle. So when you mentioned about the need for belonging, and it's so interesting. So in my work, we always go back and we always kind of look at, if there's any major childhood events, what did that look like? And
Right.
often patients have been through chronic stress for years, and it does
Hmm.
stem from not being fully accepted, maybe not being fully accepted by the family. So they develop
Right.
attachment issues, and that could lead to perfectionism, wanting to be validated, people pleasing, all of these that you've actually mentioned. And I finally, when you just said that, I go, oh wow, there is a connection to even how you spend money. So it's connection to stress, and that affects
Hmm.
your body, but at the same time,
Hmm.
it's a connection to your relationship with money or the sense of belonging. So how would that translate to into behavior? The fact that you feel you need to belong. What would that look like financially?
So in my case, I mean, that's exactly what I like to find out about somebody, your relationship with money. When I talk about being financially literate, I'm not just talking about the technical side. I'm talking about the side that we kind of don't even realize that makes you financially literate. I'm talking about your relationship with money and what your numbers are. The what's your credit score, what budget should you be on, how much is coming in and going out. But beyond that, first is to identify that relationship with money. And so that's where I was able to stem mine from was when I looked back at, okay, how did I get here? And this was like this 21-year up and down ebbs and flows. All of it wasn't horrible, but there were times that I had a ton of money, like probably way too much for my age. And then there were times that I had absolutely nothing. And because we don't talk about money, no one knew. So
Mhm.
this was me suffering in silence in this financial trauma that I was experiencing. But when I thought about, okay, I got here and yes, I'm in debt, but how did I get this so far in debt? When I think about some of the things that I was spending money on, it was for that sense of belonging and acceptance or to not feel less than, to kind of fit in. And it the core of that was that I had no I didn't have any self-value and, very, very low self-esteem. And so then that translated into depression that I didn't even realize was depression. I just didn't know, until I mean, I can't even express how important it is for us to just sit down and take a minute because it wasn't until I sat down and took a minute, I had no idea where that depression was coming from, nor did I even realize or want to accept that some of that was depression. And
Wow.
so, and it blew my mind. And now it seems so simple. And I'm thinking, how could I not get that? How could I not understand it? But I recently just was I wrote a blog post on it because even like, in high school and in college and different ways of acting out and especially like around family, I'm thinking, how come no one realized that this was a cry for help? I'm too young to identify that, but why why was the behavior looked down upon or criticized or, which actually ended up feeding it more in a negative way. If you were already feeling bad about yourself, you have low self-worth, low self-esteem, and somebody else is validating that for you, saying, yeah, like, I mean, you're not worth anything. Instead of, wait a minute, why are they acting like this? Maybe I should find out more, ask questions, and not just, judge the book on the surface and assume that I know what's going on with this person.
Wow. Do you know what? It's so interesting you say that because I've worked in so many different socioeconomic groups and from not so wealthy to actually the wealthy. And it was just such an
Mhm,
eye opener when patients would come in and say, yeah, we're struggling with money in the wealthy area. And it was
mhm,
such an eye opener because all you see is that expensive car, the expensive house, and private school. But actually, they're
mhm,
struggling because they're keeping up
mhm,
with the Joneses and they actually can't
mhm,
afford it. And it's just such an
mhm,
eye opener because a lot of people look around and compare themselves and like, oh, I wish I had that. I wish I had that. And they don't realize how many people are actually in debt rather than actually wealthy. And that sort of propagates, well, I want that car as well. And I want that handbag in order to
mhm,
belong. And you're so right, actually. It's just going back to yourself. Would you say that
mhm.
was part of your journey of healing?
It was because now I do it almost daily.
Right.
Just, not when anything is like blowing up and on fire, but like just to kind of like give myself that mental health check because I know that everything is stemmed to something else. And so it's really not what's on the surface, So we don't know that, but we pay attention to what's in front of us, what's on the surface, but it's actually linked to something else. And to find that something else, the root of it will help fix whatever it is that you're going through. But I couldn't agree with you more on just society. I kind of blame it sometimes on social media because, we see highlight reels of when people are doing well, or at least they want you to believe that they're doing well. But, it's like, well, how do you know that that person didn't just go in debt to go on that vacation or, to be at this party or, they're on this yacht that allegedly is chartered, but how do we know that that's the even their yacht or that they're not paying for it? And so I try to remind myself and others, you have to find your own happiness on your level. And so sometimes we're looking at things and you think that you want them, but do you really? Or do you just want them because you feel like you're supposed to have it or because somebody else has it? And so that's what to build towards. But is that what you really want? And so sometimes when I'm thinking about that for myself, um, expensive shoes are really popular. But, and I used to live in this mindset of, okay, that's the goal. Like I need to get to that level. But shoes aren't even my thing. That's not even, I don't even,
True. Yes.
I don't even care about shoes. I mean, I want nice shoes, but they don't need to be like $5,000. So, I care about healthcare more. I care about, going and getting spa treatments. And so, find your own happiness on your level. And there's something for every level. And I recently just started talking about, because we have a new tax law with the big, beautiful bill. And I had a conversation with someone about the most vulnerable communities. And after talking about this for years and years and years, and it being connected to what I do for a living, the working class, in my opinion, is the most vulnerable because it's not always as you've seen, and there's nothing out there to assist those that are the working class. If you are below a certain poverty level percentage, then there's government assistance out there for you. But what about the people that are actually working? In the past, a few times had like 3 or 4 jobs at a time and could not pay bills, but then could not get any help or assistance or qualify for anything. And so my heart goes out to that group because it's almost sometimes like we're too proud to admit that we need the help, but we're not all supposed to know everything. I mean, we all have different specialties for a reason, and that is your gift to then give back. And it's okay to not be financially literate or to even accept that you're not and accept the help because that is our everybody's foundation. Finance is directly, in my opinion, linked to mental health.
I agree.
And when we're talking about mental health, no one's ever talking about money in it. We're talking about, okay, were you abused as a child, and these things that happen, but what about the money part?
Absolutely. So, Michelle, I'd love to know, how would you take someone on a journey where they're in almost rock bottom, where they go, wow, how did I even land here? What advice would you give to our listeners who go, right, I really want to change my financial situation? I'm had enough of going from paycheck to paycheck, and I want to feel that freedom of, if I want something, I can get it and not
Mhm.
just living paycheck to paycheck. What would you do?
So, my number one piece of advice first is just to be honest. That moment of honesty changes everything. And that's what it took for me. I knew that I was in debt. I knew that I had a bunch of financial issues, didn't know where they would come from, how to fix them. But before that, it's just that moment of honesty. And so what that looks like for me, or what I recommend, that moment of honesty is pulling your credit report, writing everything down. I mean, I ended up putting things in a spreadsheet. I opened years of unopened mail because when I was going through it, of course, I did not have money to pay a credit card. I was just trying to survive. But that moment of honesty and seeing what you're dealing with kind of, at least it forces you to face it. And sometimes it's not actually as bad as what you think. And that involves, calling and try to make payment arrangements and making a budget. Nobody likes the B word, but whether you make $10,000 a year, $10 million a year, everybody needs a budget on some level. I mean, you can't just spend, spend, spend and not know what's going out and what's coming in and what your absolute necessities are. So that moment of honesty for me and for everybody else, I feel like that's what changes it. And then start where you are. I remember, just on the topic of investing, I thought, oh, you have to have a ton of money and you can't start where you are. But whether we're talking about investing, whether we're talking about debt, whether we're talking about budgeting, cleaning up your credit, any of it, just start where you are. You have to start somewhere. And however long, like I said, I was in this cycle for 21 years. So nothing is going to change overnight. But that moment of honesty and accepting that you need help and getting rid of the embarrassment and the shame.
Mm.
And I recently just talked about this as well somewhere else, where we don't even own those emotions. Somebody else gave those to us. And we agreed at some level. And so we adopted them. And then we ended up letting them change how our mind thinks and accepts it. But embarrassment and shame came from somewhere else. Somebody told you that, this credit score is bad, or having debt is bad, or, someone told you that, but it's not true. You don't have to just accept that. And so I feel like, first of all, you don't know what the next person is dealing with. And so you don't know that they're not in debt too. So why should you be ashamed and embarrassed of your own situation? I mean, if we actually, I wish there was, do you remember that show? It was called like The Black Mirror or something. And there was an episode, it was talking about like, futuristic AI thing.
Yeah.
And people walked around and you could like see
Yes, I
their
thought.
like their social media like thing.
Yeah.
I wish we could all wear like a credit score or something,
Yes.
so that people wouldn't feel so bad.
Exactly. And the reality would just come around, which kind of makes me
Yeah.
really love this next question is mindset. How
Mhm,
important mindset is. I think we've kind of touched on it, but
mhm,
mindset is key to everything. And it's interesting when patients come on the health journey with myself, we check in with mindset. And one of the key
mhm,
things we look at is, do you feel responsible for your health? Is health a
mhm,
priority? Are you ready to work hard? Is,
mhm,
is this important to you now? And are you willing to take
mhm,
full responsibility for that? Because the health journey, when you look at so many different models, it's broken because the patient doesn't take responsibility and the doctor feels that they need to fix. And that's the
mhm.
massive reason why the cycle just keeps continuing. But what would you say about finances?
So that goes all the way back to just trying to find out that question of who you are so that you can know what the root of your spending habits are. It's all connected to something for somebody. Sometimes I was recently just talking to someone and it was connected to all the way from like a Christmas of not receiving gifts. So now you get excited when there's like Amazon delivered at the door, but it's causing you to overspend. So it's linked to something. You have to find out what that is. I mean, and we all do different things depending on the emotion. I mean, some people eat, some people shop, some people just go to sleep, some people, so you have to find what that root connection is. Only you're going to know what it is. And it is definitely connected to your spending habits, which relate to your relationship with money. It all goes together because once you can identify that, then the rest of it, you constantly, almost like myself. I mean, constantly checking myself. Why am I buying this? Like,
Mm.
I'm definitely not somebody that shops when I'm depressed, thankfully. But, I don't, I mean, there is nor like, no worse cause like okay I was shopping for a sense of belonging and acceptance. That's not better or worse than shopping from depression or shopping for something else, but that I was able to identify that. Then every time I'm spending money, especially not on budget, then I can ask myself that question. So that is, I think, the key when I'm always trying to, still in life, no matter what the topic is, I'm always trying to get down to the root of something. I want to understand the root because I know that whatever is right in front of us, that's tangible. We can change that. But if you find out the emotion behind the action, then that's how you can change things. Just like you said with health and somebody deciding to get their health right. I mean, financial health is part of your health. If you're in debt, that causes stress, that causes depression, it makes you isolate. And there were symptoms that I was having back then that I didn't realize were related to stress.
Mm.
And I didn't see it as stress because it had been going on so long in my life. I thought it was just a way of life. Like, I mean, I guess, everybody just works all these jobs for the rest of their life and pays bills and this is what life is, but that's not what life is.
I totally agree. And I think it goes also back to values. And it goes back to what you said much earlier on in the podcast, who are you and what's important to you as well. And it's so
Mhm,
easy to sit around at a table of friends and realize, oh, they've got some expensive holidays, they've got expensive shoes, expensive handbags or jewelry, and you go
mhm,
around the table. And it's so important to go, okay, what's important to you? Where
right.
is your money going? Because
Mhm,
jewelry's not, or like what you said, shoes are not. And you don't have to do it all in order to
mhm,
spend on. And I think it creates a sense of freedom to go, actually, more than happy to spend on books and knowledge and education and health rather than, another list of things. But it takes a lot of, I would say, it takes a lot of self awareness to say, wow, I don't need that, or I don't have to buy that bag to belong into this group, and takes a lot of courage. What would you say to that?
mhm. It does take a lot of courage because, I mean, just that step, when I that that fast that I put myself on, and I still like since then, I feel like I just counted it up. I feel like I've been on this fasting journey for like 8 years now, and and I fast several times a year because it is just mind clearing. It's transformational for me, and it helps to just almost like get me back, stabilize me and settle me, and clear the mind. But when I wrote down, when I got honest, I took that moment of honesty and I started writing these things down. And I talk about it in Bluebird. I mean, it's seriously 5 evictions and 4 repossessions and 3 bankruptcies and $500,000 in debt. I mean, just that moment of honesty, yes. I mean, it temporarily, because like I said, the emotions and the shame and embarrassment, all that is borrowed. So that was temporary, but just to be able to face that and then admit it to the world, the things that held me back, these were they were connected to the things that had me in different states of depression throughout the earlier years of my life from that embarrassment and from not feeling like I had an outlet to be able to talk about it because again we don't talk about money, but it took a lot of courage to admit it, and but it set me free. So I mean I feel like it's connected and I want that for everyone, like whatever it is that you are embarrassed or ashamed about, first of all, get rid of that emotion because you don't own it. Somebody else gave it to you. But then to have the courage to be like, okay, this is my situation. And so what? Like somebody else is going through it too. And that's actually what links us all together. And it just shocks me that that's the one thing we don't talk about. We don't talk about finances. And I would love it if, as a society, we could feel comfortable enough to, at lunch be like, so what's your credit score? and
Absolutely.
not be ashamed, kind of help each other or, learn from each other.
So important, isn't it? Even to ask, what are you doing? How are you
Hmm.
financial situation? But before we wrap things up, I really want to know what can people expect from reading your book and also your organization? How can we support your organization?
Sure. So Bluebird, like I said, talks about the most traumatic events in my life, and it covers a 21-year timeline. And my brand is transparency. So you can expect 100% honest transparency. I am still writing and I have a blog and it's current day transparency. And I recently was just asked which was harder. Was it harder to write about the past, like something that you've been through and that you've gotten over? Or is it harder to write about current day transparency? And I'm like, I don't know. They were both hard, but I think that that current day transparency is even harder because I can't fix it yet, but I want to be so honest with my community that I don't want anybody to feel alone how I was feeling. So I can't much more than like just the 5 eviction, 4 repossession, 3 bankruptcy, $500,000 in debt. And it really was 500,000 in debt, but that was accumulated over a 21-year period. And no, I didn't have to pay $500,000 because by then some of the debt was written off as bad debt. It was sold and, on and on. I think I really only paid like a little bit over 100,000. But without giving the story away, it is as honest as I could be. I love stories because I like memoirs because I like somebody's story. I like somebody's history. I like the things that you can't Google. And even if you know them, things that you would not know. And after reading like over 100 memoirs, I always had the question like, so what else was going on? Like, I mean, I know that they were really sick and this was their life and the ups and downs. And I mean, that's a really sad story. Super compassionate about it, but what else? And so I tried to provide the what else, like down to how much money was in my bank account different times and what was in the refrigerator, what my house environment looked like to really kind of put you there. But my greatest hope is just to have readers not feel alone in whatever it is that they're going through. Because, like I said, these are the things that a lot of people, hardly anybody, will tell you about them. And so, with hashtag stability, because all of that kind of led me to create hashtag stability. And it was in the middle of this up and down financial trauma cycle that I was in that I mean, I was getting denied healthcare. I couldn't get anything. And I just was like, this is inhumane when I am working 3 and sometimes 4 jobs at one time. And like I said, I was not being reckless or irresponsible. I was, on a budget, on a very strict budget. And it just didn't make sense for me. And so I had promised myself that when I got in a better space that I was going to help people in that arena. And so I started hashtag stability in 2017 when I was still in the throes of debt. And after writing my book, I wrote over COVID. And then after accepting a publishing deal, I just decided, I have to go larger with this because this is very important. I feel like financial literacy is everybody's foundation. I mean, I can't stress that more. And I'm not even talking about the technical side. I'm not talking about how to invest and how to save for retirement and the different types of investments. I'm not talking about that side first. I'm talking about that other side, the interpersonal side, and identifying what your relationship with money is and just knowing what your numbers are, that very basic side that will change anything. I mean, you don't need to know how to invest first. First, you got to get honest and figure out what your relationship with money is and figure out what you have going in and coming out before we can even talk about anything else. So um, I am I think that my board is slightly together. I would love in a perfect world, I'm such a perfectionist. So in a perfect world, I would love to have like 5 people per department. And that's what I have to get over because, I'm like, okay, it's okay to start smaller. But we are in the middle of putting together different events that will teach the different things that I'm talking about. But right now, there are videos available so you can sit at home and learn how to invest, how to budget it, and just what money is. There's a really awesome video that just talks about money, in the inflow and the outflow. And that's all self study, self paced, and every resource that we offer is absolutely free. So there's no reason that, if you're following me or dealing with me, there's no reason why you should, on the other end, not end up being financially literate.
Amazing. Michelle, this has been so inspiring. Absolutely inspiring. Thank you so much for your time. Any last few words for our audience?
No, thank you so much for having me. The easiest place to find me, because we've mentioned the book and we've mentioned the nonprofit, and I also have a financial services company, but the kind of one-stop shop for everything is my personal website, which is by michellecampbell.com. And so that's BY and then Michelle spelled with 2 L's and Campbell like the soup.com because on there is my financial services company and links to the book and links to hashtag stability. And then anything else that I'm working on, I'm the queen of doing way too many things. And so all of my partnerships are listed on there as well.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.
Thanks for listening to Six Hats, where it's all about progress, not perfection. If this episode spoke to you, don't wait, hit follow now, leave a quick review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Want to take your next step today? Download my ebook. The link is waiting in the show notes. And remember, this is general advice only. Always speak to your practitioner for anything medical. See you next time.